Hey, what's up? Well, I'm making another video probably soon, because normally I wait a few days or at least 2 days to make another video. And I hope that noise isn't too bothersome. I'm washing dishes in the dishwasher. And what I want to talk about in this video is how it is International Women's Day. And although I should have worn pink, instead of wore my turquoise and aqua blue because it's March 8th. And I just want to talk about that, how it's International Women's Day. And I didn't really know about that until I got to be an adult, or, well, probably the last 10 years or so. Every year on March 8th, I think about International Women's Day and, you know, just the fact that my identity as a woman probably trumps all other identities, pun intended. All other identities that I could have really pale in comparison to the fact that I'm a woman. And although I can no longer have children, I was born into a unique position to care about the rights and the bodily autonomy of women. I was not born the gender that can all their life just disregard, the health of women for possible pregnancies, to live. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to be pro-life when you're not the one getting pregnant. It's like, I'm not glad about it. I'm not glad I was born female, but unfortunately the fact that I am female means that I have to see things through the pink lens, so to speak. I cannot, I can't just think like someone who was simply born without a uterus. I've often said that the only thing better than a complete hysterectomy is to simply be born without a uterus in the first place. And that is true. But when you don't have a uterus, you end up disregarding the rights of you can end up disregarding the rights of half the world's population. I mean, you only care about what serves you, which would be for as many babies to be born as possible, whether or not their mothers want them, just so that you can have a workforce or, however they benefit you. Whether they're male babies that'll be working for you or, cutting your grass one day, or female babies to have sex with when they get to that age. Men only see babies, as how they can serve them. They don't really care about the quality of life that they have and whether their moms want them or not. And of course, not all men, of course, but a lot of men feel that way. And especially men, that vote for Trump, and, men probably from this area, they have that mindset that, it's just all about what serves them. So what if it negatively impacts our health, to get pregnant, really at all, but especially if we don't want to be pregnant or ever have kids. They don't care if we get extra colds. I mean, I know I'll come back to that every single time, but it is an obsession. I cannot shake the obsession with the common cold and how frequently I've had it at some points in my life. And I feel like my obsession with colds has been somewhat of a blessing, in that it forced me to consider things from a viewpoint that most people do not have. Most people, as I've stated before, it's like the common cold isn't even a thought in their head. And especially before the pandemic, before, the whole masking and all that, the common cold was about as invisible to most people as mosquito bites, which I don't know what bit me there, but some did. The common cold was about as unimportant in most people's life as paper cuts. And, it's just something, you get it out of the blue, you get over it, and then you forget that it ever happened, to most people. And that's why they have so many kids without ever even considering. They don't ever consider, you know, how many fewer colds they could be having at that part of their lifespan. I mean, sure, there's the argument that it builds up your immune system for a later date, and that you won't get as many when you're really old. But you know what? F that. Literal SH. Because I'm glad that I've been able to enjoy my young adult life. I feel like it, I didn't get to enjoy my teens necessarily as much as I would have wanted to, partly because of my sister's germs, but of course that was only a very small part of what was wrong with my life in my second decade. You know what I'm saying? And as I've stated before, I probably had more colds in my first decade because the latter half of my second decade, I want to say like 15 through 19, I had 22 colds. It's very telling when you think of it like in a 5-year interval. So I probably had at least 30 when I was like 10 through 14. Before that, I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just assume they were about the same or slightly higher on average. So from 30 to 22 colds at 15 through 19, and then 11 colds. So yeah, that's about half. Yeah, in fact, it's exactly half. 11 colds when I was, 20 through 24. 4 colds, which is what I used to get in a year's time, just 10 years prior, when I was 25 to 30, 25 through 9, I guess. And then the lowest ever at 30 to 35th birthday, maybe 3, like 2.5 really, because one of them was so mild. So that's about a cold every other year. And then, of course, my upper 30s, about 1 per year. So I think 5, something like that. Maybe 6, and then 1 thus far at age 40, which has only been 1 year. So, the fact that I am so obsessed with the common cold has given me a unique perspective, because most people don't think of it from that standpoint. Most people don't give that one bit of thought. You know what I'm saying? It's like, they make me so mad. They have a baby and they suddenly start catching colds all the time and they want to blame it on something else. Oh, I'm just not eating right. We just grab whatever and I'm eating more fast food. Well, bull effing SHIT, because I was not eating any better, except that I was eating more. I mean, when I was 25 to 35, yeah, that's about when I had the least colds, like maybe 7. When you think of a decade as beginning 5 years later, and it actually does, that's another way to look at it. I think I had like 33 colds at 15 to 25 or something. So yeah, wow. That's like maybe a fifth, or yeah, like 5 times as many or something like that 10 years prior. So yeah, I mean, I guess I was getting 80% less colds once my sister went away to college. And I mean, when you think of it that way, it's so true. And so, most people, they just don't give that a second thought. They don't think about colds, and therefore they don't really plan their lives accordingly. You know what I'm saying? The colds just kind of happen, whenever they're going to happen, and people just don't really think about it that way. And so they have a kid, and the kid's suddenly catching everything, of course, because it's a kid, a baby, probably in daycare. And since I didn't go to daycare, that's why it's a big fat question mark as to how many I did get when I was like under 5 or 5 and under. But I'm assuming it was, I would just say, because my first year of life I had 4. So I'm assuming it was about what an adult would catch, because I was around mostly adults. So maybe about 3 per year when I was under 5. And let's say it jumped to at least 6 or more when I was 5 through 9 or something. Or no, 0 through 4, I guess it would have been about 3 per year. And then 5 through 9, because of kindergarten, it probably jumped above 6 per year on average. And then, of course, it just, what, 10 through 14, as I've stated before, it was 5 per year. So that's like getting one per season and an extra one in the winter, about on average. And then 3 per year, like in my college days, it's like getting maybe one in a fall semester and 2 in the spring semester, since it begins in winter. And early 20s, about 2 per year, one each semester. And then late 20s, maybe 1 per year, so once during a school year. Sorry, I had to go investigate the dishwasher because it went on the drying cycle, and I cannot allow certain things to be on the drying cycle because they will melt. There's just certain plastic items that while you can run them in the dishwasher, you have to make sure that when it goes to drying mode, you take them out and then put it back on. So anyway, so basically my annual cold rate, it just decreased steadily, as I got to the age of around 30 on average, because of my little sister leaving home. And so in my early 30s, it was about every other year. So I guess in a 2-year period, I probably have a cold, but not necessarily once a year. And then I think it gradually climbed upward after 35. I started getting them once a year again, like in my late 20s. And with the pandemic, of course, getting COVID as my only cold that year. And so, I think it's called, I think what that is, it's like the rock bottom effect, where I think you get so low that you can only go up, you know what I'm saying? But it isn't, as high. It's not going to bounce up like to what it used to be. It's kind of like the daycare kids where, this study about how daycare boosted their immune system, but the effect was only visible in elementary school. You know what I'm saying? It's like they only had fewer colds than other kids who had not gone to daycare when they were like maybe 6 to 11, especially 8, in the middle of that range. Well, once they got to be 12 or 13, what they found was that it kind of wore off, and that they were all getting similar numbers of colds in junior high, like around the age I became obsessed with them. And if anything, the daycare kids had slightly more colds than the other kids who had been getting a lot in elementary school. So it's like it kind of balances out. And then by high school, of course, there's no difference whatsoever. No observable difference. There's more of a difference between the two genders or sexes. There's more of a difference between male and female in high school, with the girls actually getting slightly more than the boys. Unlike in childhood, it was the boys getting more. And it's a very similar thing, because the boys got more in childhood. They don't have as many to catch in their teens and their adult life. And, they're also not babysitting young children and having menstrual periods to deplete their iron levels. So, yeah, it's like it flips around. So, but then it's like, so temporarily it actually went up slightly, like the other kids just gradually, well, the kids that didn't go to daycare, it's like surprisingly, as I've stated before, they had more colds, and in the years when they would have gone to daycare but didn't, when they were a baby, because probably a lot of them had siblings in school and they were not living in a glass bubble. They may have been going to church also. So they had more colds when they were a baby than in kindergarten and elementary school. But, the daycare kids like had several times as many, like they were sick all the time when they were a baby. And then suddenly in elementary school, they were more like a 5th grader, who was used to being around germs. And so the other kids, they had about a similar number still. They were having more colds than the daycare kids in elementary school, but still less than they had as a baby. But, by junior high, as I've stated before, the numbers were all about the same, all getting around 2 to 4 colds like an adult, pretty much. But the daycare kids for a few years had slightly more in junior high, you know, like maybe, I don't know, like the study was done in a really stupid way, but maybe like 8% of the daycare kids were now getting frequent colds versus 7%. Yeah, frequent colds. I don't know what they define as that. I guess maybe I would have qualified. I don't know. But, you know, temporarily, it's like they went up just slightly, but not by much. So they had more colds maybe when they were 11 and 12 than they had at 8, when they had just gotten that daycare immunity from having so many as a baby. But, you know, by the age of 12 or 13, it kind of flipped around again. And then by adulthood, as I stated before, you could not tell. You could not tell, you know, by the number of colds, which kids had gone to daycare and which kids didn't, because it balances out. And so, yeah, you know, this obsession with colds, you know, it's just given me a really unique perspective and a unique reason not to have kids, you know, because most people cite all kinds of stupid things about, like, you know, they want to travel, they want to see the world, you know, they want to have extra money, they want to be able to, you know, climb higher in their career than they otherwise could. But for me, it's none of the above. You know what I'm saying? For me, it's basically germophobia rules my life, and I don't want to be around the extra cold germs, not only that a kid would bring home, but also being stressed and unable to fight them off myself, you know, because of my stress level and not getting enough sleep. So yeah, and I don't think it's fair, you know, that in childhood, you know, the boys were catching more colds than the girls, but then it flips around in adolescence, you know, for a number of reasons. And in adulthood, you know, the women are the ones that catch more colds because they have to deal with young children when they're sick, and they're more stressed out by said children. So yeah, it's International Women's Day, and I want to end with one thing. I'm really tired of people unsubscribing from me. I don't know what it is, but I'm losing subscribers to these videos. I don't know what they don't like about my videos, but they just unsubscribe. And I really don't like it, you know, seeing a lower number every day. But, you know, if you're mad about something I've said about Rugrats, you know, you can KMA, and K is for kiss. Because, you know, another thing about Rugrats is that a lot of the writers were male, and all those shows about children. And if there's one thing I do not need or want in my life, it's stupid children shows about children written by the gender that does not take care of children, that doesn't have children, doesn't take care of them. You know, it's like, why would I want to see a potty training episode of a cartoon written by the gender that does not potty train their own children most of the time? You know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear a man's idea of what children are all about and what being a child is all about, because it's stupid. In a lot of ways, men have a very stupid outlook on life, and especially on children, you know, which is a woman's domain. So I don't need to hear anyone mansplaining to me about, you know, why they cannot accept, you know, that Angelica did what I've said she did, and she may not have even been potty trained by my definition. I don't want to hear it, because their perspective is wrong. I don't like it. I don't like a man's outlook, because they just think a baby, you know, it's just a miniature adult in a diaper. You know, they don't understand, they don't really understand babies, you know, like the gender that actually has baby, or the sex that actually has babies. They don't understand children, and I don't even understand, you know, from a mother's perspective, what babies are all about, and I don't want to. I would never pretend to. But you know, there's just certain things that men don't understand. You know, they think that the minute a kid wears underwear, well, that means they're potty trained, because they're not necessarily potty trained by my definition. And I mean potty trained for all 3 states of matter. So yeah, I don't want to see any more shows by men about children. You know, and they always seem to omit the common cold from the cartoon universe. You know why? Because they're usually not the ones that have to take care of sick kids. And so from their perspective, it's like kids are never sick. You know, perhaps they think they just happen to be the one kid that was sick all the time. Well, you know, they don't understand that all kids are dealing with sickness, especially colds, and that women are the ones that bear the brunt of it. So happy International Women's Day, and I'll go ahead and post this video.